China. It sounds unthinkable, but according to many experts, the countdown may be on. China's President Xi Jinping is shaping up to the West like never before. And just last week, a major new military alliance was announced between the US, Australia and the UK to counter Chinese aggression in the Pacific.
The first major initiative of AUKUS will be to deliver a nuclear-powered submarine fleet for Australia.
America and its allies are preparing for a battle we didn't think was possible.
The idea that China would never attack, even never invade, well, I wouldn't count on that.
Xi Jinping is already on a collision course with his own people. From recently outlawing boy bands to enforcing propaganda lessons in primary schools. Xi Jinping is taking control, and he's prepared to fight for it even beyond his homeland. If this unimaginable conflict were to happen, it would begin with an invasion of Taiwan, the tiny nation off its coast that China has long believed is theirs.
Once they make the decision to do this, they will come full bore, like a crazy man with an axe.
Control of Taiwan would give China a huge new military reach over the Pacific.
That would put Australia in the firing line pretty quickly.
But is Australia putting itself in the firing line by talking too tough to China?
It is very dangerous to frame China as like worse than Darth Vader.
Tonight, we investigate just how close to war we really are.
The question of whether or not to go to war may well end up getting decided for us.
So is resistance futile?
We should not, to borrow a phrase from Game of Thrones, bend the knee to Beijing.
Good evening, I'm Liz Hayes, and this is Under Investigation. Joining.
All right, so Shalom. I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to YAHAWAHSHI'S, YAHAWAHSHI'S, double honors to apostles of GMS, and the sincere Shalom to the bros out here pushing this truth and sincerity. And I'm going to continue with this clip a little bit. Now, I'm not going to play the whole thing, but just to really get into the main points I want to go into, especially since these people still refuse. Well, I mean, I would say some people are understanding that we're basically going into a war, which we've been into a war. It was just a matter of time before they announce it. But these are the things that people, like your average person outside, would never talk about. They're so caught up in the football games and everything else that goes on around them. Oh, here it is. But they'll talk about the next sports and all this other stuff, but they're not talking about what's going on outside of this. But that's because these people don't understand, or they just don't want to understand that their livelihoods is coming to an end. And there's nothing they can do about it. But that's the Stockholm syndrome of this society. But here it is, World War III. Talking about war with China. Are we closer than we think? Anytime you have to question that, we're much closer than everyone thinks. Like I said, we've been in war with hell. This place has been in war with China for a while now. It only takes for them just to announce it that people will start believing it. I'm gonna continue with the clip a little bit more.
Me tonight, 5 experts who each bring a lifetime's experience to their views on war with China.
We've got to ask ourselves the question, do you want your children or their children to live in an authoritarian world where democracy is on the ash heap of history and states no longer have freedom of speech, freedom of thought? Or is democracy worth defending?
China has been preparing for war for at least 3 decades. Its whole military modernization has largely been aimed towards having a war over Taiwan.
I think that war with China should be unthinkable and should remain unthinkable, because when we talk about war with China, we're talking about the potential for a level of casualties and destruction that this country has certainly never experienced, and for people across Asia.
I do think it is very dangerous to frame China as completely evil, only malevolent. Yes, there is a bad China, where China does things that we find unacceptable. But I think it's really important for Australia to accept that there is also a good China. There are things that China does and can do that are for the benefit of the world.
And this is what that smooth talking that a lot of people, these politicians like to do, especially since, as he mentioned, the things that China can offer can be a service to the whole world, and by the whole world it means Babylon. But this is all part of the agenda for this to happen, even though especially this is prophecy. But do you see how they like to use some words and try to make it seem like that, oh, this is only, they can do good things. It's only good things when they can offer it. Everything else, because they want to follow the footsteps of Babylon, all of a sudden now they're the bad ones. But no one says anything about this place doing the same thing. Going over to other countries, bombing them, to, assassinations and all that other stuff. No one's saying anything about that.
Clinton Fernandez, you would argue that it's time for ordinary Australians to be aware of this.
Absolutely. I think it's very important that this debate occur. I'm glad it's occurring here. War is an extremely serious matter. It will shape the destiny of the world for the next 75 years.
Now, when he said the next 75 years, I was wondering why 75 years specifically. But then when you think about it, and it doesn't even have to be 75 years, but each war that goes on through these generations that come out, as each generation comes out, no one can tell you how this war actually went, except for only of like maybe a few people what they had to do. But then they couldn't tell you how it was started. And just like each generation, especially even up to my generation, we don't know jack shit about World War I and II. We just only know what they told us in these books. And that's because Esau shaped his story into what it is today. They only give you the little run-downs, but they never tell you the actual details. Or if they do, they blame it on someone else. So, let's say this place were to go on 75 years. By that time, the generation of that age won't be able to sit there and be able to know what the hell actually happened. But if in this generation, they just know that, oh, World War III was happening. And then people that had to go into that war came back, tells their stories of what happened to them during that time, and that's it. But no one knows the actual story of how this actually happened. So that's the crazy thing of how they always put a number on these things. Like why would it be 75 years in total? But that's because by then everybody wouldn't know what the history is. And that's why, even in the scriptures, it says, remember the days of old. But we don't remember, especially in this society, we don't know the days of old in this society. We just know the simple basis of what they tell us.
There's no doubt Australia has been engaged in a war of words with China on human rights and more recently the origins of COVID-19.
It remains Australia's firm view that understanding the cause of this pandemic has nothing to do with politics. It's essential for preventing the next one.
And China has bitten back, hitting us with punishing trade sanctions. Tensions and rhetoric are escalating. Earlier this year, a senior Australian security official warned of the beating drums of war coming from China, echoed by Defence Minister Peter Dutton.
I don't think it should be discounted. I think China has been very clear about that goal.
So are we unnecessarily antagonising a superpower and major trading partner? Are we talking ourselves into a war? Or are we bravely standing up to
Australia has shown the world how one deals with the People's Republic of China and the Chinese Communist Party in particular.
Colonel Grant Newsham is a China specialist and former head of intelligence for the US Marine Forces in the Pacific.
Biggest complaint about the Australians is that there's not 10 times as many of them. They were the first ones to stand up and say, no, we're not going to put up with this. Australia's future is, you're going to have to fight for it if you want to keep it. And the idea that China would never attack, even never invade, well, I wouldn't count on that.
But Australia is making a very expensive enemy. Our war of words with China is already costing us billions in exports every year.
All right, so I'm going to get Matthew 24:6. It says, and ye shall hear wars and rumors of wars. See that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. So yes, this is what we've been prophesying for the longest time. We'll have many wars. Within this one war, you had the war of civilians, you're going to have World War III, and you might even have the war of politicians. It's going to be a lot of wars. You're going to have a lot of riots and all this other stuff. So-called rights are going to be taken. The law is going to be in effect where it's just going to scrutinize these people, piss them off. More lockdowns, less entertainment, more surveillance. Because that's what it's all going to lead to, especially when that chip comes out. There's going to be a lot of things that's going to be real strict. And this place is pretty much already a third world country, but it's really going to look like one under martial law. This is Isaiah 9:19. It says, through the wrath of the Lord of hosts is the land darkened, and the people shall be as fuel of the fire. No man shall spare his brother. And especially when all this all comes down, especially when they start forcefully recruiting people into the military, it's going to be living hell out here. It's a chaos that I can't even explain, especially since I haven't even been part of one. But we all know that it's going to get real nasty out here. Everybody going to be trying to fend off them for themselves, fight each other. You're going to hear a lot of crying and a lot of everything. It's going to be, as they say, it's going to be unspeakable out here, because this is going to be the worst downfall that this place ever has. When this place crash, it's going to be the real apocalypse out here. The real purge. The movies that the Esau likes to make that y'all people are so fond of. Yeah. Be prepared for it to happen. This is Joel 3:2. It says, I will also gather all nations and will bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat, and will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations and parted. So the Lord's coming back with a vengeance. He's going to gather all everybody that's in war, especially in this World War III, going to be gathered together and be done away in one fell swoop. The destruction of this place is much closer than we think. The World War III is one of the major prophecies that needed to come true. Just one of the major ones. We still got the other major ones to come whenever it does happen. But we know that's going to happen. So then we just gotta wait patiently. But even the Lord's saying that he's gonna gather all these people. He's gonna be done. He's gonna do away with them. And he's gonna gather his elect. And that's what we ultimately wait for is our salvation. To know if we're gonna be saved or not. Well, we're gonna be saved altogether, but to see if we're gonna be delivered, we're gonna get destroyed here. And this is the key goal that we're ultimately looking for, is to be delivered. But that's pretty much all I wanted to go into that, because hey, we've been saying it for the longest time. The World War III is here. World War III is here, and there's nothing you people can do about it. You can try to hide between your shows, your movies, your entertainment, but at the end of the day, when this thing really kicks off, you're really going to see it. So that's pretty much it. So with that, shalom.